What does the term filter mean outside of music? You might think of people filtering into a room, a coffee filter, or maybe a filter in a bitmap graphics program like Photoshop. They all mean the same thing, but they're emphasizing different aspects of it. A coffee filter lets through the hot water and anything that it's dissolved along the way, while holding back any solid particles that are too big to fit through the gaps in the paper filter. When we say people are filtering in, they're not coming as one solid mob, but in trickles, as if something were holding them back. Bitmap graphics programs like Photoshop refer to a filter as if it's something you might put on a camera lens that changes the way light passes through it. In software terms, these are processes and maybe even plugins, software that was made to be run inside Photoshop rather than being standalone programs. And they refer to any way to change the image file, and they can wander pretty far from the metaphor of a filter on a camera lens. In audio, a filter doesn't refer to any kind of plugin, it's more specific than that. In general, it refers to letting certain parts of a sound through in terms of frequency, and changing other parts of a sound's spectrum by boosting or cutting its loudness. You might often hear the term attenuate used to refer to reducing sound in loudness. Audio filters come in two main families, passband filters and shelving filters, and they're named in somewhat funny and sometimes backwards ways because that's what made sense to the engineers who originally needed to use them. What's the most basic type of filter? I like to start with a low-pass filter because it's something you've done by hand, just maybe not in audio. Passband filters are named for the band or contiguous range of frequencies that they leave alone. They reject frequencies outside that range. However, these are time domain filters, only working on the waveform as it changes over time, and so there isn't a sudden cutoff between a filter's passband and stop band, but rather a gradual slope or roll-off in attenuation. So, a low-pass filter will leave spectra below a certain frequency the same, and attenuate spectra above that frequency, towards silencing them fully. When would you use that outside of audio? Well, remember that frequency is a rate of change. A high frequency means a high rate of change, and so a low-pass filter would resist, de-emphasize, or gradually attenuate quick changes in a stream of values. If you were sampling data every day, like your weight, and you wanted to de-emphasize any spikes or dips, like from that birthday party or the day you felt sick and lost your appetite, what basic math might you do? Averaging would be helpful here, right? More specifically, calculating the mean. Add the samples together and divide them by the number of samples. If you do that day by day, averaging the new sample with the previous samples, we call that a running average. It filters out fast changes, and that's exactly how a low-pass filter works. A low-pass filter is a running average. Higher frequencies will still impact the output, but they'll be attenuated. You can make the roll-off steeper either by using multiple filters in a row, or including more samples in your running average, or weighting the older samples more heavily than the newest sample, or any combination of these techniques. You could have an entire course on filter design. So a bandpass filter is named for the band of frequencies that it passes, unchanged. The cutoff frequency isn't an absolute limit, but it's defined as the frequency at which spectra are attenuated by 3 decibels. The slope or roll-off might be defined in terms of decibels per octave. For example, for a low-pass filter with a cutoff frequency of 1 kHz and a slope of 6 decibels per octave, 1 kHz would be attenuated by 3 decibels, because that's how we define the cutoff frequency. 2 kHz, 1 octave higher, would be attenuated by 6 more decibels, so a total of 9 decibels. And an octave higher than that, double the frequency, at 4 kHz, would be attenuated by 15 decibels. This seems super picky, and you're not going to need to do this math often, but it's important to stay in touch with the fact that this is what's going on in your filters. Some samples are being delayed and added in with new samples in various combinations to get what you want.